Let's go.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully, yeah. Okay, cool. My mic is connected. I forgot to check it ahead of time, and I was worried. Anyway, hello, everybody. Welcome to Ramblemancy. It's been a few weeks, but we're here now. I actually don't remember exactly how long it's been. Like 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
I think
3 weeks.
I think we had a week off, and then we had like a community night, and so
Yeah, that's right. That's what we did. I can't even remember what I was
that's it.
trying to do like 5 minutes ago, let alone what our last several weeks of Rambling look like. Anyway, tonight we are joined by one of the distinguished members of our very own community, Hessan. Hessan, hello and welcome tonight.
Hello,
Uh,
hello, hello.
we tonight we're going to be talking about a little topic that it's come up before here on Ramblemancy, but it was a specific conversation that John Freeman and I were having last week, and we're like, you know what, this would be a great topic for a Ramblemancy, and we're like, who could we get to talk about this? And the answer became obvious, and many of you will know why as soon as I say it. But basically, tonight we're going to be talking about the way that we critique media, and also in a slightly more kind of niche way of putting it, the words that John used to describe it was moralizing taste. So
One of my favorite topics, especially in tabletop RPGs, because
Oh,
Twitter goes round and round about this one.
it sure does.
It's a carousel, and you're never getting off.
No.
yeah.
Carousel ride to
No.
hell. Anyway, but yeah. So before we get into that, however, I would just like to give everybody a quick little update on our Tomorrow is Dead progress. So season 2 progress, actually looking up this week, because after a few weeks of people being absent and then a week of filming being canceled due to illness, and also PC issues. Those of you who were on Breeze or who were on John's stream yesterday, you know what was going on with that. But
Check my VOD. It is 45 minutes of me
it's a wild ride.
unspooling
Yeah,
the yarn
yeah,
of everything that has happened in our collective streaming tech in the Twin Cities this weekend.
absolutely. But this week we're back on track with our filming schedule. We'll be filming the next few episodes of Tomorrow is Dead season 2, and I'm still very confident that although I am waiting for our recording session on Monday to be over to formally make this determination, but I'm still optimistic that we'll have October premiere dates. So stay tuned. We'll keep you updated. But there, in a bit of other exciting news, there's a bit of a special episode that is going to be taking place somewhere in the early season, and we finally have our cast formalized for the special episode, and we will be having our session 0 for that in this coming week. So yeah, I will say no more about that because you don't need to know. You'll find out when everybody else finds out. Because even the main cast doesn't know what's going on. They just know that it is happening. So
The only reason that I'll know is because I'm designing the overlays, and so I have to put names on them.
yeah, but you'll understand what's happening about because I'm not giving you names until it's fine. Everybody, you'll all basically know at the same time. Uh, but yeah,
Hold
so that's
fast to your secrets. Don't let them spill too soon.
but yeah, so that's the update on Tomorrow is Dead at the moment. So I've got nothing else as far as that goes. So I believe we shall get into the thing. John, why don't you go ahead and start us off since like you had a lot to say when we first started talking about this.
So, this actually started because some folks that I follow on Twitter were talking about like PAX panels that they were like semi-interested in running a while back, and I remember seeing the titles for one of them was like is critique dead in tabletop RPG, and the person who was looking is a journalist, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's a perfect like clickbaity title for a panel, but that also did do what it was supposed to do, which prompted me to think about that very topic. Which is like how we engage in critiquing media and like kind of this phenomenon that I feel like I've seen in recent years, that I know even I've talked about, like with like English, but my old English professors and stuff, that it's getting harder and harder to find like non-holistic like takes on media, right? If I don't like something about this, it very quickly becomes this thing is bad, like objectively, or there's like a moral reason now that this is something that other people shouldn't watch or should feel bad about engaging with. That's not a super healthy way to engage with media.
No, not at all. And I think following that up, I remember one of the things that like specifically prompted this into a conversation. There was a specific conversation that I saw going around the other day, and now I'm unfortunately having trouble recalling exactly what it was that prompted this. But I think it was just seeing in very general terms like a lot of, oh my god, it was just in my brain a second. I'm having a whole night of this apparently, where I like had a thought, it goes away, and it doesn't come back. Pretend I said nothing, and then we'll be fine. Moving on.
We'll circle back to that.
Just rewind.
Yeah. Get the like clack. All right, take two.
Here it comes.
Don't you even.
Thank you.
I'll keep this near at hand just in case.
Oh god.
One of the reasons that I did want to invite Hessan tonight, though, is because you run a delightful like YouTube channel and stuff where you do reviews of tabletop RPGs and stuff. So I know that that's something that you do a lot of, like picking up games and reading and giving first impressions and things like that. So I'm. Oh, I sorry.
Sorry, no, I was sorry. You were continuing, so I was waiting for you to finish your thought. Sorry.
But yeah, no. So I know. I thought this would probably be a topic that would also be of interest to you, because that's sort of like part and parcel to what you do is picking up like new games or like games that you see floating around the scene and giving kind of a like as objective as a kind of review as you can. Right?
Yeah, and I'd have to agree with like the professors you were talking to and stuff, and that it is starting to get harder to do reviews that aren't, or at least it's. I'm finding that a lot of people put out what I would call critical reviews or critical takes, where they're, and by critical I mean like going, they're not just critiquing elements here and there and saying, I like this, I don't like this, but like you mentioned, like basically saying this is bad. There's nothing good about this. There's nothing salvageable about this. It's just bad, right? And that's something that I've always tried to avoid. Just because honestly, I mean, yeah, sure, there might be a game out there that doesn't fit what I want or what I feel would be good at a table that I would play at, but obviously I don't play at your table, right? Or most other people's tables. Obviously I played at Lucas tables once or twice. But but
it was,
but
I'm sure it was awful too. Like
Good choice.
No, it
Terrible
wasn't.
Choice. You made
no,
a good
it wasn't.
choice.
It was very fun. Thank you. But anyway, yeah, I mean, there's always elements in there. Even if I take a look at a game that I don't really like all that much, either because of the subject matter or just because there's some mechanics in it that I just don't feel really work that well for what it's trying to do, that doesn't mean it's like there's always at least some element there that is definitely worth looking at, exploring, potentially adapting. Right. I think in my case, when it comes to reviews, one of the reasons why I'm able to kind of take a look at this in a different way than a lot of other people who do reviews might, is just because I am focusing a lot on those mechanics, and that a lot of the games that I've made have been, I like this from here. I like that from there. I wonder what will happen if I just mash it together really hard,
Yep.
and what kind of tape I can whip around it, and or see what comes out at the end.
Mhm.
So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I think I think I've only ever really created one honestly really negative review, and that was just because um it was for a game that was kickstarted, and then I bought the game with the intention of reviewing it, and I thought it was really cool because it was a Bronze Age game. I get it, and it's like later on I found out it wasn't super clear on the Kickstarter, but later on I found out that this was kind of created by a person who was very strongly evangelical Christian and incorporated
Ah.
a lot of biblical stuff,
Gotcha.
and basically made like the Israelites basically the Ubermensch
Ooh.
of the other people. I mean, obviously they didn't use that specific phrase, but I
Sure.
mean, it really felt like they were trying to make their god the best god, even though they incorporated Babylonian or Akkadian or and other religions and stuff. But it felt like they were really emphasizing this is pre-Christianity, but we're heading in that direction, and so
Mm-hmm.
everything's going to advantage these people.
Right.
Um,
Mm.
it didn't really feel very much like history to me, even though that's what it was kind of selling itself as.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that was the only real negative review I've kind of given up to this point, just because I kind of felt betrayed by that. um, as a backer, I felt betrayed by that.
Right.
But that was the only reason why. Because
Yeah.
admittedly, there was some elements in there that would have been really useful and nice in other games and systems and stuff. But it's just,
Well, I wanted
yeah.
to something that you said earlier. I think is something that is really interesting to me because it's something that I take even when because I do a lot of like uh for it's one of the reasons why we have like the media club list on our Patreon, and it's because it's
Mhm.
something that I just do just kind of even as a hobby. I like one of my favorite things to do, just a way I get my brain going, is when I'm watching something I like picking it apart. And I don't necessarily mean like analyzing every level of it, but just looking at it and saying, okay, what's working, what isn't working. And that is specifically one of the things that you said that I employ as a tool in like evaluating the media that I'm consuming. It's not is this good, is this bad, but what's working and what isn't working, which I think is a holdover from like my creative writing classes in college, because that's how we were
Yeah.
encouraged to look at when we were workshopping each other's and our own pieces. We were encouraged to use that kind of language. What is working and what isn't working, and the reason that that is so important is because it doesn't just focus on what you like and what you don't like, but it also encourages you to look at what was intended by putting this in there, and is this achieving that, right? And it makes you sort of evaluate, because like I feel like we're always talking about evaluating on it, like using like critically evaluating things, but I don't know that just saying that is enough, especially for like people who haven't gotten that kind of like encouragement or education in how to do that. And so like, and this is a realization that I had recently, that I feel like we say this all the time, but I'm not sure that we specifically talk about how one does that kind of critical evaluation. And the way that you do it is basically by saying, okay, what was the intent here, and did this achieve that or did it not achieve that? How could it better achieve that, right? And like that is what critical analysis of media looks like, and primarily, right? So I am very suspicious as and vocal about my suspicion when I see people talking about new shows that are coming out, particularly Star Wars, shows that are coming out, and they're say, "Oh, it's bad writing." I'm like, "Oh, cool. Well, how can you tell?" And there's usually I was like, "Well, it's just because it's bad." Okay, but what makes it bad? Well, the writing is bad. Okay, and
All
it's
right.
like, what's
What
circular
about
circular logic? What's
yeah?
that? And yeah, it's and it, anyway, that yes. So something when you said that, when you were talking about like looking at things that work and what doesn't work, what achieves its purpose and what doesn't, that's immediately where my mind went, is that that's absolutely one of the most useful tools to use to evaluate this stuff, and I feel like it doesn't get used that often.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And again, this is something that comes up a lot. I feel like whenever um, I have an international relations background from like my university and early career and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So whenever we're talking about um, we have a there's a phrase that it wasn't around when I was in school, but it's become a lot more popular called cultural humility.
Mm.
And that specifically is focusing on you don't necessarily know why certain people do the things they do or why a culture works the way it does. Because obviously you haven't been born in it, you haven't grown up in it. You might have some inkling or understanding, but you don't know for sure if that's like the way people actually do things or that's just the way people talk about it.
Right.
Because you don't have the context. And I know it seems a little strange trying to compare, like, let's say, role playing games or Star Wars. Well, Star Wars less so because it's a cultural phenomenon,
Sure.
literally.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of the same basic idea. The way this game is constructed is that much different from the way that the people are interacting socially because it's social rules, right? Or taking a look at like whether we're appreciating certain genres of art or whether that is a game or a TV show or literal paintings. I mean, that's all based on just how you absorb things. So I think, and so part of that cultural humility is again, it's understanding why people like what they do or why people do the things they do, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily get any form of real education on, or any form of like practice in very often, because between like social media bubbles, or it just choosing to interact with people who are like you, whether that is literal culture or that is like a subculture, like what you have with popular media
Right.
nowadays.
Right.
Well, always, but especially now. Um, it makes it easier. So yeah, it make being able to interact with people who don't agree with you on whether or not they enjoy something is strange, or has become strange
Right.
for many people, and that I think that's part of the problem is we've lost the ability. At least many people have lost the ability to kind of communicate why they don't enjoy something in a way that doesn't end up hurting emotionally, attacking another
Right.
person.
Well, because like,
Um,
and it's funny that you say that because I was also thinking about that earlier too, right? Because this idea that like what John was setting up as like this critique of like, well, this is bad, right? Or like you're a bad person if you like this thing, right?
mhm.
That's kind of is the implication inherent if like it because there's sort of an inherent implication in if you engage in that kind of critique of something when you say, oh well, this game is trash, right? Well, but there are people who like that game. So what are you saying about them? What are you implying about those people? And so like while it is not directly like an ad hoc attack against the other people in the sphere, you could say it's an ad hoc against the game, but not really. Like you kind of are, and that immediately sets the stage for like for just truly a breakdown in communication at that point when we're talking about a thing, and suddenly we're not holding our media to any sort of standard anymore. Now we're just attacking each other over this thing, and it's no longer about because I feel like in my experience, I feel like a lot of this of critique comes from a in in some cases more, some cases less, genuine desire to elevate the media that we are consuming, right? And the focus on that gets lost when you talk about like this sucks, this is terrible, this is bad, right? Because now you are indirectly attacking the people who actually kind of liked it, right? And I can't tell you the number of times I've had a conversation start that way where I've like taken a step back and sort of interrogated why a person feels that way, and they'll explain it. I'm like, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from. I can understand that. Here's something that I liked about it, and then the end result of that conversation ends up being them going, huh, I never really thought about that part of it. right? Or maybe I do that, right? Like maybe I'll look at it when and when they explain to me what they didn't like about it, and I'll realize, oh shit, you're right. This kind of does suck. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. That kind of changes the whole thing for me. And like, and that's learning, that's growth. There's value to that, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just shouting at each other over the internet. Um, Before we move, I do want to take a quick second to acknowledge some of because Odds has been saying some good stuff in the chat here.
I know.
Um, John, do you want to take these because I sort
Yeah.
of lost the chat a little bit.
Absolutely. No, I saw you respond to it as well, Hassan. But Matt said, I think people associate media into their identities when they take criticism personally. Yeah, that's actually, I feel like that's kind of what Luke's has been getting at here, is that people like internalize their taste in media, and make that like a facet of themselves. And like, yeah, like you like the things that you like, but also if somebody else doesn't like that thing, or if you don't like a thing, that's where it starts, that starts to get really messy. And then Odds had a really good comment earlier. That was, my husband reminds me all the time that it's okay to be into things at like a 2 out of 10 level, and not everything has to be an obsession. I feel like these are connected. If you like something, you're expected to like all of it and rave about it like all of the time. And I've been thinking about that as we've been chatting too. And it's interesting, the the ability to kind of give the critique that you were talking about earlier, that like you do on your channel, is kind of grounded in the experience of having created things as well, or like having written things or designed things. And not everyone has to be super into game design to talk about games, but it's always one of those things where like I encourage people to just write, or to just like try stuff. You don't have to be amazing at it. You don't have to be obsessed with it. You don't have to be able to sell it, is the biggest thing. Like, it doesn't have to be like a hustle for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you can draw or write or design games, or make TTRPG characters in different systems, just for fun. And whether or not that's something that you are super into or not, you're allowed to do that. And it it broadens your experience and allows you to engage with media in a way that, as Lucas said earlier, elevates kind of the way that you interact with it.
Yeah. I also saw Odds said this, which I thought this was an excellent point, and also reminded me of what I was going to say earlier, which is what one of the things that sort of was the seed for this topic. And Odds said when OGL stuff happened, some of my friends were like, we were switching to Pathfinder when we finished this campaign, and now they complain all the time about D&D, and we can critique what works and what doesn't, instead of now hating the whole thing. And that absolutely is, so that is kind of what brought this up, because I saw yet another round, I'm sure you've all seen it, another round of the whole like, I really like D&D, and then people jumping in and saying, hey, that thing that you want to do might work better in a different system, and them going, stop telling me what game that I should play different games, and like going around and like, or the opposite of that, which is kind of what Odds is getting at here, which is just hating on D&D because it is the big popular thing, TM. And like, look, I like D&D 5e. I enjoy playing it. It's kind of a comfort game for me. It's my comfort zone. It is the game that I know how to run the best. Okay, I can run other games, and a lot of GMing is translatable to other systems, but some of it isn't. And some of it, and the parts of it that I feel the most comfortable with, are definitely the things that make me feel the most comfortable and settled when I'm running 5e, are things that are not translatable to other systems because they are inherent in the game. And but that doesn't mean that I think 5e is the most perfect TTRPG in the world. In fact, I have been pretty, I think, vocal about things that I think are not being done well, either in the past or currently by 5e. There are a lot of frustrations that I have with it, but that, and I will complain about those things, but I'm not gonna sit here. You're never gonna find me going, yeah, D&D, the dragon game, it sucks, it's bad. I'm not gonna do it, because there are things that I like about it. There are things I don't like about it. That's the whole conversation about that, to be honest.
Mhm.
So like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think like just to summarize this within the context we've been talking about, the ability to say like I want to do this and D&D is really bad at that is something that feels like we are losing over like through kind of social media cue.
Mm-hmm.
I have tea.
Ooh.
Excellent.
But yeah, the ability to say like I don't like this for the thing that I want to do is a little bit lost right now. I feel like, and
And
it's one of those things that I don't we shouldn't lose that.
And I will say, I have also been on the other side of this, okay? Where, like, knowing that and, like, having my long history of GMing, like, certainly not as long as some, but I've literally also not been alive as long as some, so let's just maybe chill out on that for a second. Um, but, like, I've been GMing since I was 16 years old, so that's, what is that, 15 years? 15 years, give or take, right? Um, and depending on how you define it, technically you could even start earlier than that, right? But like I've GM'd so many different systems, so I kind of have, and I like to think about this specific kind of stuff. So I kind of have an understanding of like, you know, where the limitations are, because I've tried them and I've found stuff that just straight up didn't work, that just like D&D can't do, or just doesn't do well or whatever. I've done it. I've found those limits in many instances. Um, so but I was in a game store a couple of months ago, and I was specifically asking them because like the guy could tell that I was like just sort of browsing and looking for something and not finding something. So he asked me if he could help me, and I told him what I was doing, which is that for my home game, I'm running like a post-apocalypse steampunk fantasy game. That's kind of what I'm doing. And so what I asked him was if he knew of any like third party supplements or things like that would be useful for any sort of like for a setting like that. And he came back at me with like the thing that I expected, which is him to say, which is basically that like, well, I mean, I can't really think of any. The closest I would say is maybe Eberron, but even that's more of like a campaign setting guide than it is any actual like third like usable stuff. Like it's useful if you're trying to run Eberron, but not so useful to like take and apply to other things, which I expected. That's kind of what I expected him to say. But then he hit me with the, you know, one of the things that a lot of people who are, you know, newer to D&D don't really seem to realize is that their D&D isn't really, they try to make D&D do everything, and they try to, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, how did I end up here? I was like, how did I end up here? This is not what I asked. I didn't ask you to get on the soapbox. I didn't ask. So like I do understand being on the other side of that conversation as well. And it's really annoying because I didn't fucking ask. What I asked was a very specific question about, and like, look, I know it can't do everything. I understand that, but like, I am basically, but the reason mine works, whereas like just sort of doing a just steampunk, but D&D, is that like I was like, what would it look like if you took D&D and added steampunk elements to it? Not what would happen if I ripped the system and tried to do something completely different with it. So anyway, that's just me ranting. That had nothing to do with like our greater topic as a whole. But what I'm saying is that the caveat to this is that there is another side to this conversation where it is just like, okay, we get it, but that's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're discussing. And so I understand that there can be some frustration with that as well. So I'm just putting that out there as an awareness thing.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna actually loop back a little bit to the comment that was made about you know, just the connection of the identity into the media and the criticism. And I think and this applies less to D&D than it does to a bunch of other games, partly because I mean, when you think of D&D and its creator, I mean, we all know a number of the original creators of D&D back in the ye olde days were not that great people, or had very great ideas that ended up in the game, right? Or or of course, the corporate overlords that run it now.
Yeah.
But whenever we're talking about, and I think that again, that's probably one of the reasons why after OGL and everything else, hating on D&D kind of became vogue, because you could hate on it and not hurt somebody's feelings, at least like the creator's feelings. I can rail about it all I want. Wizards of the Coast isn't going to care. They're too busy counting their money.
Yeah.
And Hasbro really isn't going to care because they don't even know what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
but obviously, when we're looking at critiquing and criticizing a lot of games, obviously that are out, I mean, even if I'm talking to a person who's not the creator of said game, there's a halfway decent chance that they might even know the person who created that game, or at least one of the people on the creative team, whether it was an artist or whatever. And so, in some ways, it's not just that I'm attacking your identity because this is a piece of media that you hold here, dear to your heart for one reason or another, but also I might be attacking your friend, right? Or I might be attacking people who you even if it's not okay, Star Wars, obviously none of us know the people who make Star Wars. I'm assuming that's probably a safe assumption, right? But a lot of people who like Star Wars look up to people who are involved in the creation process for, I keep picking on Star Wars, I don't know why. For Star Trek, let's say, right? Like you might know somebody who was involved in writing, or you might really look up to this actor or that writer or this Okuda, right? Or any of the other people involved in the creative process, right? So it's yes, there's that cultural element where you've absorbed it into your culture, so you're attacking the tribe, so to speak, right? But you might also be directly attacking people that this person knows. So you're not just attacking the tribe's identity, you're attacking the tribe physically. Not physically. You know what I mean?
But like attacking its members as well, as well as the identity. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a lot different for me to rail about Fishblade than it is for me to talk about something like more corporate, where a lot of the steps of the creation process are removed from the core creators of the game or the book itself, or like D&D, where at this point, like, yes, there are people still writing that game, but it's generations removed from the source material.
Well, and not only that, but there's also like then there's a counter argument being like, well, then they like that doesn't mean just because you know them that they are doing a good job of it, and that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. However, there are better ways of addressing that than just saying this is garbage, right? That there are better ways of addressing, of saying like, well, here's what this is another classic creative writing thing, right? Like a workshop thing. I really connected with this, right? This really, I connected with that, right? That's a very classic creative writing kind of thing where, or really just, I imagine, but that's where I'm having my experience, but I imagine in like other artistic critique as well. But in creative writing specifically, which is where I have my experience with it, it's an important piece of critique because what it says to the author of that piece is that they did something there that really resonated with their audience. They did something there that resonated with their readers, and it encourages them to look at why that worked. What did they connect with, and how can I replicate that in other instances? And like those are important critiques, and they are so much better than just this was trash. Right? And there are definitely ways of addressing things that you didn't, right? It's not, you're not only limited to like the positive stuff, like, oh, I liked this, right? More like this, another creative writing buzz phrase there, right?
I know from which professor at our shared college you got that one from.
Yeah,
Lucas and I went through the same English program. So.
Yeah, so like there's other ways. There's ways that you can address even the negative stuff, saying I don't think that this didn't pull me in, or saying, you know, this was, I felt like the energy was a lot lower in this part, you know, saying things like that. But it involves a certain critique, involves a certain amount of self-awareness, right? Because it means you, as the one doing the critiquing, have to understand what you didn't like about the thing. Like, you have to know, or what you did like about the thing. You have to know that. So there's a certain amount of self-awareness involved, and I feel like we often, when I see the kind of critiques that we're talking about, um, it's because somebody had a gut reaction, like a knee-jerk reaction to it, and then didn't interrogate it any further, and just went with, I don't like this, is bad, right? It requires a certain amount of self-awareness as well. Like, what is this feeling that I am having? Where is it coming from? And like, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to mark out something that Matt said, which was this is garbage isn't really criticism, but yeah, Lucas, I feel you. And I'd have to agree with that statement. I mean, obviously, this is that's what I kind of what I was talking about when I say critical takes
Right.
earlier. But I'd also have to say that, especially I would have to say that especially newer creators who are unfamiliar with like how critique generally works, or how critique really should kind of work, and what it should look like if it's going to be constructive, and also people who have unfortunately had to go through the trauma of having tons and tons of of these critical takes kind of thrown at them, they might end up reacting to an honest critique, an honest sort of constructive critique, just as negatively, just because that's what they're used to doing or that's what they expect. Basically, they've kind of set up the armor, expecting bad things to come, and that it's just all just going to be hate. Um, or it's either all hate or it's all love. If there's a mixed message, then it must be hate, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of people, especially in creative pursuits, have a, there's a tendency towards unfortunate negative outlooks, especially about the self or things you
Yeah.
created.
I know, like, as somebody who's been a part of quite a few like game Kickstarters and crowdfunding campaigns and stuff as an editor, and who has now like run one themselves. Every single time I see a new comment, like my brain is like, oh boy, here we go. Like I'm ready. Like I'm always just bracing myself for it. For somebody with a little like orange title next to their name to be like, hey, I'd just like to talk to you about this thing that's on the Ashcan PDF that you sent out. Oh my god. I have a professional editor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's so especially since the act itself of creating can be a deeply sort of personal thing. And it's not always easy to separate yourself from that, especially even when receiving good critique. It can be really hard to separate yourself from that. And so that, since that feeling of like, this is gonna be bad, or like filtering it through that like presupposition that what you're getting is gonna be hate, can and sort of separating yourself from that tendency can be really hard to do. And I say this like, especially if you have ADHD and you get RSD very easily, because then like any even remotely negative thing would be like, it's just like the table flip of emotional circumstances. Like, well, everything's terrible and I'm a horrible person. I'm just really bad at everything. I guess I'm gonna go pout in a corner. Like, I struggle with that tendency. Like, even a little bit of negative feedback, and it is honestly a coin flip as to whether that's gonna come out as like sulking in a corner and like going and hiding, curling up into a ball, or like lashing back, which is the worst and most toxic of the responses to that kind of thing. So yeah. Um,
Cactus Hugs had a pretty good comment too. That said, like, I find in the setting up the armor cases, ensuring that critique is structured becomes super important. If you're trying to grow your craft, set aside a specific time to receive that critique and leave it there.
yes.
And I think, like, as far as this conversation that we're having right now, going towards like how what is doing critique right look like. I think that's a great way from the creator's side to kind of encourage that in the people who consume your media. It's like, yeah, and like, this game is an ash can, or it's in playtesting. We want feedback on this, and here's how you can do it, whether that's like a Google form or leave comments on the itch page, or anything, any number of things, or hell, like people tweeting or blogging about their games as they're writing them, like, and encouraging people to leave comments or like play test like editions of the game as they come out. That's a great way to like structure that feedback and say like, this is what I am looking for, you know and then responding to those things with how it worked for you, how it didn't work for you. Kind of been talking a lot here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I like what Odd said here too, which is sometimes when I imagine people telling me they don't like my work, I imagine saying it's not for you then, but this has not happened, and but the thing is, that's so valid though, because if somebody has not connected to something, it probably has less to do with what you have made and more to do with who is receiving it. Um, and I think that's such an important point, and I think we human beings, I think, as a species, tend to be a little on the self-centered side, in the sense that we tend to look at everything as being pertaining to and revolving around us, and we evaluate the world that way, right, by default. Because that's where our perspective is. Of course, we're gonna do that, right? I'm not making a value judgment on that. I'm just saying that's just how we operate, because that's where our perspective is. By and large, that's where we're at. And so it can be sometimes difficult to separate yourself from that as well. Say like, I had this reaction to this thing. That's about me and not about the inherent worth of this thing. Um, that's about me in relation to that thing, and that's one of those reasons why saying like the offering the like this is trash isn't great, because it's not really you're making a statement about the thing, when in reality your reaction is about how you received that thing. And like, I don't know, I think there's certainly room for nuance in that too, but like you're saying that, Odds, you're absolutely right. Like, oftentimes it is that it's not for them, because there's probably somebody who does like it, and you know and that's the person it's for. So,
Yeah, and this honestly does take me back to a piece of game design advice that I got very early from Matthew Gravelin, which was when I was working on a game that you know, it was a joint effort with another designer, and we never got around to finishing it and publishing it. Um, but the the feedback he was giving me when he was reading the rules is, don't write your game for the people who aren't going to play it.
mm-hmm.
Because like, I was putting a lot of like qualifiers and like very like kind of granular like edge case things to cover, like edge cases and stuff like that. He's like, if somebody who plays exclusively Warhammer 40K shows up to play this game and pick it apart, they're going to do that regardless of whether or not you put these in here. So write the game like it's for your intended audience, which is people who like weird little tarot powered storytelling games.
Yeah.
And like that kind of just feeds into the, this isn't for me conversation that we're having here. Like you can encounter something and be like, ooh, like a lot of this just not really something that I'm very excited about. It'll make it bad necessarily. The most perfect example I have of this is, I know a ton of people like Powered by the Apocalypse systems, both people who are fledgling designers and people who are learning RPGs, and I just bounce off of them. There's something about the way that the 2d6 partial success 7 through 10 or 7 through 9 and extraordinary success 10 through 12 just like, I don't know, it just doesn't, it never quite hits for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I like, there are a lot of really cool things that Powered by the Apocalypse games do, and I've seen a lot of great examples of those things working. I've just like, they've never quite been for me. And I don't think they're bad. I think it's a great design framework. And I think it's a great place for people to start designing. I just don't like certain ways about how it plays for my own tastes.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and it's that there is like, um, I think that's a good example is um, sorry, I had a thought and it collided with a different one, and now I have neither one of them. Um, like the Powered by the Apocalypse game, like I feel the same way about it for different reasons, but like I also have, when I talk about it, I'm always very careful to say I don't like it. I don't like it because I don't understand it. I'm very clear that that's the reason. I don't get it. As many times as I've tried to learn that system, I don't get it. But that's about me. That's a statement about me, not understanding the game, and I can't like it if I don't understand it. So, like, that's about me. And like, I also have very little interest in understanding it, mainly because I have other games that I do like and understand, and can play, and I don't need to understand and like Powered by the Apocalypse. But my on the other hand, on the other side of that, my lack of understanding and therefore dislike of it does not translate into me telling you it's a bad system, because I can't say that for sure. I have no real way of judging that, and I wouldn't be able to do it. But yeah. John, is there a portal to hell opening up behind you?
Oh,
No, that's just that's a good peal of thunder.
Ooh.
ooh.
Ooh,
Oh
okay.
God,
October's
love
here early.
I love Midwest thunderstorms, and I will be loud about it. I think they're one of my favorite things. I spent a lot of time in the late summer as a kid, sitting on my like covered front step, um, with like a bowl of wheat thins and pieces of cheese and some pepperoni and a very worn copy of The Hobbit that I is still in my attic. But I had a lot of fun watching the thunderheads roll in and then just listening to the rain and storms. So
Yeah.
I know that's a terrifying like discharge of static energy on a massive level, but also it's a deeply comforting sound to me, as long as it's not, right there,
Absolutely.
100 feet from me.
That's valid.
I'm seeing this conversation about feedback in the chat, and I want to. This is something that I feel like I have talked about before, but I kind of want to turn it around too, because like negative feedback is one thing, but I think there's certain ways that positive feedback can be equally unhelpful. And it is based on the same concept we're talking about, where we're taking this holistic, like you mentioned, John, this holistic approach to, right? And I remember I found it when I was in college and we was doing like all these different like creative writing workshops and things like that. It was so difficult for me to accept compliments, and but then sometimes I could handle it perfectly fine, and I couldn't understand what the difference was. But then I think I eventually figured it out, and I know that I've talked about this before in a different context on this channel before, but what I realized is the compliments that I had difficulty accepting were the ones that were about me. And the ones that put my writing in context of me, right? For example, the ones where people are like, "Oh my God, you're such a great writer," or like, "You're so good at," and like this kind of thing, whatever, right? That was hard for me to accept. Not out of any like self-deprecating thoughts or any kind of like lack of self-esteem, but just because it didn't feel to me like it captured the experience, like my process. It didn't do what I had actually done, the process that I'd been through, any justice. By contrast, the compliments that I had no problem accepting and that actually made me feel really, really good as a creator and as a writer, were the ones that were very specific, saying like, "Wow, that one scene that you wrote, that was so great. That was so like I loved that scene," right? Even if it wasn't any more specific than just I liked it was not about me, right? It wasn't about me, it was about what I had done. because we're not, at the end of the day, in any place where you're sort of showcasing what you're doing, you're not doing it to like showcase how great and wonderful of a person you are because of this thing that you created. You're doing it because you want to share the thing that you made because you're proud of it and you want other people to see it, right? Like, so when the compliment is about you, it's like, for me at least, it feels like I've been ignored in my own display of the thing that I am proud of. Like, my work has been ignored in favor of me, and I'm not the star of this show, right? Yeah, exactly. Cactus Hugs. The "you're so talented." Exactly. That is exactly the kind of thing that, like, you're so talented. Like, it's like
Please no.
tell that to this like wastebasket that is full to bursting of all the things that you didn't see because I crumpled them up and burned them. Right, like that.
Yeah, like I don't know, it's it even if it's not like a super ultra specific comment, just like speaking to a particular piece of something that moved you, or even saying like this part of it made me feel something. That's a compliment that's great for me as a creator to get, or
Absolutely.
it's a piece of, or even like on the flip side of things, like I loved the performance, I loved the game, the book, the show, whatever. This just I felt weird about this, and like that's also a jumping off point there.
Yeah. And
You know,
I know Cactus Hugs and I have had this conversation several times actually offline, but like as I said, when the compliment is about you, often it's because they don't know what to say about the work. So like ultimately the right choice is to say thank you and understand them as they mean themselves, but still. And I fully agree. Like it's not like I'm annoyed by those like kind of compliments because I do understand that they are coming from a genuine in like intent to appreciate what I've done, and I get that, but I'm more talking about when it's feedback, like intentional like criticism, because I've definitely gotten it in that context before. um but it is still a difficult thing to accept as a compliment, right? As like, oh, you're so good at this, you're so good at, and it's like, thank you, I appreciate that, but also like it's hard for me to like I feel like I'm forcing the thank you out, you know what I mean? Like because I'm like, that's not what. But I think even in terms of recommendations, right? Like, for example, if somebody recommends a show to me and they give me nothing other than like, "Oh my god, it's so good, you'll love it," that is not a recommendation that I'm likely to follow up on.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, what about it makes you think that I would love it? Please tell me that. That would be more compelling to me. Um, but yeah, so like it's sort of in the same kind of vein, but yeah,
Right. Well, like Hector had mentioned, also, it's like actionable, right?
yes.
Oh,
Hmm.
I really liked this scene. Okay, I can pursue that and ask you, okay, why did you really like this scene? Or why did you really like this mechanic, right? What about this sparks joy, right? And then you can build from there, right? Or you can just accept it and then, and then bring in, say in the future, okay, if I want people to like this thing, then I need to figure out and do it again,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Hmm.
Again, assuming you're going to be making a second thing that's in the same general thing, because that's
Yeah.
the other problem is that I feel also, especially in sort of the indie TTRPG community, um, someone gives you a critique on a particular thing, you might not necessarily take it that well, not only because it's a thing that's already done, it's very personal to you. It was probably a struggle to get it done while you're
Hmm.
doing 10,000 other things that life throws at you, since this is not your full time job. Um, but also, there's the fact that there's a decent chance this is something you're never going to revisit. Whether it's because you're going to go and make something else, or make a thing that's everything you're going to make from here on out is going to be completely different from the thing you just
Yeah.
finished, or because you're like me and you feel like everything's a perpetual state of work in progress, even if it's been published and finalized and even printed. You're like, no, this is not done.
Yep.
It will never be done.
Nothing's ever
I
done. It's
mean,
just due.
it's just
I
how play is too. Every time I've ever done a play or performance, I was like, oh, I did at first. I was like, okay, yeah, Tech Week's over. We've done the show, yay! It's like, but then someone was like, it pulled me aside and was like, no, every show is still a rehearsal, and that really was like, well, that person was also very like a very good, like, became a really good friend. Their words very much resonated with me, and that's what I think about in when you mention that.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely, and like I wasn't anywhere near as involved in theater as you were, Freeman. But when I was involved, I felt that because even in my performances, I always felt like, oh, last time I made this mistake, or I didn't inflect in the right way. I wish that I'd done this differently, or I wish I'd moved my body differently in that moment. And then the next performance, I'm like, and then I do that. I just put it in, and you're absolutely right. There's a certain amount of that also kind of factors into this. The idea that everything kind of is always a work in progress, and of course, like with with games, it's tough because once it's out there for public consumption, even if you come out with like, oh, here's a new version of it, or even if it's just some errata, right? There's almost no guarantee. There's basically no guarantee whatsoever that everyone who is playing the game or who has already gotten it into their hands is going to implement that stuff. I do it all the time with TTRPGs that I play. When I see errata is released, I mostly ignore it. Um, as I'm like, nope, nope, that's too much. This is how I learned to play it, and this is how I'm gonna play it. And so, like, there's that. So it's a little tough with, but like, yeah, it's but I like that's something that is also a huge part of this too. I think.
I think a big part of this conversation, something that I started thinking about more again, and as we kind of circled into this bit about like receiving feedback and critique and giving those kind of things is um a lot of times when people come to me and ask me for like feedback on a game or something, I always like I try to ask some version of the question, like, what's your goal with this? Like, is this just something that you want to write and throw up on itch so that your friends can play it, or do you want to make a product? And those are two different conversations, right? Because if your answer is I want to make a product that I can crowdfund and sell to game stores, then we're having a different kind of conversation about the game design process and the game writing process. But if it's just I want to make like there's this thing I'm excited about, I want to make it. It's very much like what you were saying earlier, Hessan. Like this isn't really a situation where you want or need a bunch of people online like telling you like or moralizing the choices that you made, because it's like I made this one sheet RPG so that my friends and I could play bears wearing funny hats carrying out like a heist to steal back a bunch of honey, to allude to an enormously popular RPG that was written on a legal pad, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's and I think some of what we get, in addition to like all of the social media echo chamber stuff that we've talked about, I think some of the like lack of depth in conversations and critiques and stuff like that comes from a place of expecting everything to be a product, like a very polished, homogenized, like ready to play kind of thing. Whereas like a lot of indie games are Fishblade, are these weird,
Yeah.
funky little systems that are like, hey, you're gonna play this like 4 times, and it's gonna simulate this exact experience as best as somebody who's written a game in their life, can make that happen for you. And
Yeah.
uh, you know, it pays to understand like what you are engaging with when you sit down, because the people who make stuff like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or 40K or even some of like the bigger like indie RPG publishers, like small time RPG publishers, like those people all have the intent of making something that is there to be played by lots and lots of people, and something that they can, books and expansions and things like that they can sell to you.
Yeah,
as
you
opposed
can't.
to. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go ahead. I'm looking for something.
And I was going to say, as opposed to the I made this weird little RPG for my friends, and if you like it too, fucking play the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we. Uh, I'll I'll hold off on that because that kind of goes on its own little tangent. But I'll just
Mm-hmm.
say that right now that it was a very similar process that we had to differentiate for ourselves when we were making Rule of Lore. Differentiating, like, we had to have that conversation, which is like, are we just doing this as like a fun thing because we want to showcase our like the game just because we want to stream it, and if other people like it, maybe that's too, or are we actually trying to achieve something more than that? And that was a conversation. But I'll hold off on that for a sec because that's like a definitely
Mm-hmm.
a wild departure from what we're talking about right now. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, no, you have a really good point when it comes to like understanding authorial intent. Um, and I think that's another thing that also enters into uh, like people's relationships with even wider media, not just specifically TTRPGs, but wider media too. Um, because I mean, I know that certain pieces of popular media, especially relatively recently, you know, a lot of us have had to practice death of the author to one extent or another, just to maintain our enjoyment and sanity.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but there still is. I mean, the at the very least the intent of the author in the moment of creation, um, even if they change their mind later, um, has I think has a pretty major uh, element, not only in when you're critiquing it, but just absorbing it as a piece of media, um, which I know has definitely changed my relationship with certain pieces of media in the past, like I don't know, Firefly and stuff like that.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
It really is unfortunate because there are, like, for me it's listen, we know Harry Potter is all I'm gonna say. But like, and I won't
Yeah,
talk
we're
about it
we're
beyond that. But what I will
we're
say is that, like,
circling around that one.
for me, like, that was like a hugely formative piece of media for me. Like, I learned, like, it's what got me into reading in the first place. As a child, it's what then brought me to, like, which, you can argue has then had a cascading impact throughout my life because it's what gave me that love of reading, and then the love of stories, and then a curiosity about stories, which then made me want to
Mm-hmm.
study that, and then studying that led me to, like, interrogating all these other sort of branching different, like, little niches and whatever that basically
Mm-hmm.
kind of make up a lot of who I am today. And in a even in a less abstract way, there are specific things that, no, the author of those books was not the first person to come up with like these techniques, but they were the first place that I saw them, that I myself engaged with them, and were things that I liked and enjoyed and have now incorporated into my own style in writing and GMing and, like, all sorts of stuff in my basic narrative structures, right? Hugely formative. And so looking at things like that, like, it really is a a difficult thing to be able to like look at that stuff and realize, like, my relationship with those things now has to change. It has to. There's, like, it either that, or now, like, I have to really now examine certain things about myself if my relationship with this doesn't change. Now I have to really look at, right? And so and that's and it, so I feel you. Like, there's a certain amount of that has to be, you know done, and it's just not enough to say, even in those cases. For me, it's, I hate it. Like, I hate it when I see the kind of criticism where people are saying, what people say, like, oh, well, you need to stop liking this stuff now. And, like, I don't know that I agree with that. I think that your relationship, that, like, my relationship with that particular property had to change, and it has significantly. I have
Mhm.
thoroughly examined the way that I, engage with that sort of stuff, which now, these
Mm-hmm.
days, is pretty minimally, like, pretty minimally. But to just pretend it doesn't exist and not acknowledge it at all, at this point, it's I don't know. I don't know that that's entirely necessary, and it might be more necessary for some than others, I think. And I think it's a difficult thing for me to. I feel like now I'm hedging because I'm like it's such a like nuanced and difficult topic. But and
Mm.
there are definitely layers of nuance there. But yeah, um,
I don't know. For me, this kind of circles all the way back to something that Hassan said at the very beginning of the episode about like when you're critiquing like, oh, I may not like this, but this is an interesting aspect that I can pull on. And what happens if I moosh this thing from something that I only kind of liked together with this thing from something that I really like, and then like what happens now? And like as a creator, that's a really useful thing to be able to do. But there's an internal version of that too, as we develop our taste of media, and if we never move beyond the initial response of like, ooh, that's bad, or ooh, that makes me feel weird, or ooh, that makes me feel bad, then we don't we deny ourselves the ability to develop that skill, like the skill we've been talking about the entire episode,
yeah,
right? And that comes in the same way of learning new things and changing how we think about like old properties and things like that, or old series as we age, or as we experience more kinds of media or different kinds of it. And we look back and go, oh, yeah, there's some parts of that weren't great. Like I can appreciate what this did for me in terms of being a cornerstone of my a reader, or like the way that this served as an entry point for me to develop my taste in books, in tabletop RPGs, in film and TV. But like, you have to allow yourself to interrogate those things, and like allow yourself to grow with or beyond the stuff that you like.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I mean, I will always listen to Harry Potter. I mean, I haven't for a while, but I will do it because Jim Dale, you know,
Jim Dale is wonderful.
got a good voice.
He does. I want to quickly shift back real quick because there was part of like we started kind of veering into territory that I think was also very interesting a little while ago, which is uh the like it's kind of it goes along with the whole authorial intent, but it's sort of a slightly more impersonal version of that, which is medium. Evaluating things based on the media that they are, that the medium that they are in, right? And for me, I know that there was another example recently, but for whatever reason, the one that I am coming up with is The Legend of Vox Machina. Right? There are like, for example, Scanlan in season 1. Yeah, exactly. That exact face was exactly that's exactly it. It was so much. And the thing is, if you really look at it, it really wasn't that different from like if you like take it down to its like basic elements. Scanlan's jokes and behaviors and punchlines really weren't that different from what Sam Riegel did in campaign 1 of Vox Machina, the way that he portrayed Scanlan and whatever. The difference was that it just doesn't translate media. And the reason that it doesn't is because on a live stream TTRPG actual play, what is happening is Sam being a buffoon to entertain his friends. He's trying to make them laugh. He's trying to like just be absurd and ridiculous. And yes, he is playing a character and he's trying to be true to the character, but in a way that also entertains and makes his friends laugh. That does not translate in a one-to-one form into a like heavily produced and scripted medium, because now there are writers involved ostensibly. That was mean, I'm sorry. That there are,
Oh,
sorry.
hot shot.
Critical take.
Sorry, I'm listen. We've been really good.
Emotional damage.
We've been really good about being about like the way that we critique and talk about this sort of thing. I'm allowed a brief moment of pettiness. I think I'm allowed that. But no, because now there are writers involved. Because now the idea is that it's a moment that is being scripted because you're writing something comedic that is now like it's there. It was not a spur of the moment like snap sort of like I came off the top of my head kind of thing. It was written down and then had to pass through several layers of like review in order for the final process to be approved, and that's what we ended up with. And it just doesn't translate because the medium is completely different. And evaluating that and saying like, oh, this is really bad, the Scanlan is a really problematic character, of course he is, but like it's this idea that things can't necessarily translate medium, like the medium, they are not necessarily transferable in a one-to-one sense. You have to do some, here's that word, that buzzword that we are always using, adaptation. That's why it's called an adaptation, because it is not intended to just sort of be a carbon copy like sort of thing. Exactly. Yes. But Cactus, there's no such thing as an out of character motivation in an animated show. Absolutely. There's no play between table and in character like there is in TTRPG. Yeah. And there are some things like when I would hear, I would watch the reviews for Legend of Vox Machina. And see people critiquing. And my knee-jerk reaction was to say, well, they don't understand. They just don't understand because that's just how it was in the campaign. But then I had to slow myself down and stop and think about it. And I was like, okay, but examining this as not an adaptation of a, but examining this as just objectively its own, like, I had to look at it as, like, does this work as a piece of adult animation? Does it function with it? Does it play true to the medium? Or is it only trying to do these things and kind of marginally getting away with them because it is trying to stay true to a different medium? And like, I feel like the reason that that's so important is because there's a lot of our mass media today is adaptations of things, whether it's books, whether it's from like animated to live action, whatever. A lot of our media today, like it or hate it, is adaptations. And when we critique those things, we have to make sure that the critique that we are giving it is relevant to the medium that it's in, and not trying to critique it through the lens of a different medium that it was adapted from or to, right? Like, we have to make sure that we're doing it. Nothing kills a movie like, well, if you'd read the book. Yeah, exactly. Which is why there are certain, like, I love the movie Stardust. I think it's a great movie. I also really like the book. The reason I can enjoy both of them is because I watched the movie first. I saw the movie first, and then I read the book. They are very different stories. But I enjoy them equally because, and I think it's largely because I saw the adaptation first, and then I went back to the source material. And I feel like I had a greater point to make about that, but I don't remember. Books to TV is weird too. You know what? I agree, Coops. But I will also, hi, by the way. I will also say I think books to TV often, at least in my experience thus far, with books that I've read that have been adapted into TV series, works better than books to movie. Because it's you have more time to devote to the nuance that is like can be packed into a book. But yeah. Yes, Wheel of Time. And then there are of course other examples as well. There's of course the example. I didn't read the books, so I couldn't say, but I will say that I found the series very forgettable.
Yeah, there's a good reason why they couldn't make a very good adaptation of Wheel of Time for any medium other than 50 books.
Yes. Oh, so you're planning on doing 14 seasons of this? I
Yeah,
sincerely
exactly.
doubt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you're greenlighting me for like 17 seasons of show here that we're gonna write all at once. we're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No,
with
I
with with the same cast the whole
Yeah.
way through.
Yeah.
no, and Coops, just this is not in any way like saying, oh, you're wrong about that, not at all. It's just you're absolutely correct. Like, it's not, I have not read the book, so I couldn't say that it was a good adaptation or a bad adaptation. What I will say, I will comment on, is that as a show, I started watching season 2, and I was like, the fuck happened in season 1? I fully did not remember any characters' names. I didn't remember anything that happened. And I'm usually very good about those kinds of things. That's like, I'm good at remembering that stuff. I just could not. I just did not keep it in. It went into my brain. It was there while I was watching it, and then it was gone the moment I stopped watching it.
I do have to ask. Did you notice that there was cast changes?
Yes.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I
Okay.
also
So there
knew it
was
was
at least-
coming. I also knew it was
Okay,
coming
that's
ahead of
right,
time.
yeah.
So like,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Also, hi, Allison. You must have been summoned by me talking about Stardust. Um, um, yeah. But to the point though, that like evaluating certain media has to take into account the change in medium as well. And one of the one of the ones that, because it's sort of so niche still, and I feel like we don't really talk about this that much, and we should, of all people, we should, is the difference between a home game and a streamed game,
Mm.
because
Oh, I
they don't
swear we
seem on a
have.
I'm sure we have, but like not in any like certain, I don't think in this
Mm.
context, but like um
Mm.
Allison calling me out here because she's heard my whole spiel about
Mhm.
Stardust. Uh, but um, a it seems at first, I think like you could easily mistake, streamed game and tabletop game, like home game, as being like kind of the same thing. Right? It's the same medium. You're playing the same thing, but they are different because there is a certain awareness when you are streaming that you have an audience. It is,
Hmm.
in my experience, rare the streamed game where you forget that you are in front of people who are not involved in the game. It happens, but it's rare. And when those happens, those games tend to be actually like kind of transcendent, honestly, as far as like the medium of streamed game, because you have lost that sort of awareness and sort of self consciousness. But from the side of making producing the streams, it's uh it's tough, because you have so many things to factor in, um because on a certain level you become aware of the fact that you are kind of producing entertainment content. That's what you're producing, so your content should be entertaining, and so there's a certain amount of pressure to make it entertaining, right? Oh my gosh, Gemini, 30 months. Holy crap. Thank you so much.
It's almost 100.
That's almost 100. I saw Matt earlier with 39 months, which is also nuts. That's wild. Um, but yeah, so like, I haven't talked about this on stream before, but I'm gonna bring it up now. There was a while we were doing Infinite Horizon, kind of towards the later end, where there was a YouTuber who found Infinite Horizon,
I remember that.
who did not care for it. But, oh, hello, Hessan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But this YouTuber,
Oh yeah.
We have a little hype train going.
hey, look at that. Yeah, this YouTuber did not care for Infinite Horizon, but, and I will say this, he, as a caveat to this story, it was very clear that he came into it with the explicit intention of shitting on it. That that was a loud one.
Oh, that's a
And Zeus
good
was
one.
not happy.
Yeah, this is what happens when you anger Zeus when you argue in bad faith. When you critique in bad faith.
Lightning bolt.
But yeah, so this guy, he did not care for Infinite Horizon, and he like had a whole like reaction video where he was just like watching Infinite Horizon and pausing it and then just absolutely just shitting on my DMing style and all these sorts of things. And the whole time I'm sitting there thinking like, look, man, this is a streamed game. It requires different things from a like home game. You can't evaluate the streamed game on the basis that the same basis you would evaluate a home game on. Like, because different things are required of the GM. Because you have to hook an audience. You're not just, you're not just, hooking the people at the table, which is extremely easy to do, easier than hooking an audience for a game, because hooking the people at the table pretty much just is involving them. That's not hard to do. Involving people in a tabletop RPG is a good hook, because now they are doing something. But people who are watching it, that's way harder to do. That's a lot harder to do. And you have this, as a GM on a streamed TTRPG, there's just this incredible pressure to make your content entertaining and to hook your audience. And especially in the first episode of something where most of what you're doing is setting up the premise, that's a hard thing to do. Yeah, Coops, even in home games with close friends have very different vibes than games have mixed group familiarity. Absolutely. So, yeah, thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. I genuinely do appreciate that. But I didn't take this to heart. I will say that. I didn't take it to heart. That said, I will also say that even in the bad faith criticisms and arguments, there are still things to be gained, because he's not entirely wrong. And this is the part that I don't think I've ever said, but he's not entirely wrong, because there are certain things that you do in a streamed game that I think you, with that pressure to be entertaining, I think sometimes you achieve the opposite, because you're trying so hard, when it might be just as entertaining to just run the game the way that you would run it for a home group, right? Certainly without all the pauses to like talk about the rules and look up things and, consult tables and all that. Not that part of it, but the part of it where you're just running the game, right? You're not focused on making it entertaining for other people. You're not, right? There is genuine, I think that's a balance that I've struggled to find, and I'm not sure that I have found it yet, at least not to my degree of satisfaction. I don't think I've found it yet. But yeah, that's so, but the point being here that the biggest takeaway from that for me was the difference in terms of critiquing across media, right? A streamed game versus a home game is not a fair comparison, at least not if you're doing like a 1-to-1 kind of thing. And yeah. Odd says, for a long time I was watching Critical Role because I saw them as professionals. I was getting to see a story with all the bloopers and funny asides, but it was like a TV show. That's what I saw it as. And now I like watching smaller games because they are a different group of people with different stories and ideas to share. Yeah. Absolutely.
Jeff and I adore that idea.
But 100... Absolutely nothing, so we can just spend 100
I have 360k points.
Holy shit, just, Cactus Hugs.
Oh,
Thank you so much for the sub bomb. Holy shit.
Coming in at just the last moment.
Wow, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
To Freeman, to Allison, to Rune and Relic, to Hermes, and... Okay, yeah, that's all. You guys are pretty cool.
There are 2 days left in September. That's true.
It's true.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. Your subs this month are a certain. I have literally not looked into September, but they're less. They cost less, and they give us the same.
I think it's like 25% less.
Yeah. So they cost you less, and they give us pretty much the same as before. So. Not that much.
September. Ban me. I will not. Thank you very much.
It's still unfortunately Jeff Timber. Bezos, Timber, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does at least come out of Twitch's dime, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Don't tempt me on. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Gemini has a sword.
Gemini still has a sword, yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. I feel like I was gonna say something not about about Odds' comment. That's what I was gonna say. About the watching smaller games because they're a different group of people with different stories and ideas to share. Yeah, and I think that's the thing that has, there's a place for Critical Role within the the actual play sort of stuff, and that very much is the place, the space, literally right across that razor thin line between actual play and TV show, right? But there's so much other space beyond that as well, and I think that's where like we kind of have our little niche, and like others of our similar size and scope also have their niche, right? And it is what I wanted to do with Rule of Lore, is make it into a more like an experience like watching the Stream Punks back before they were the Stream Punks, watching them on Geek and Sundry, where it felt like not like you were an audience, like you were a member of the audience watching a show, but that you were like a guest who was being invited to observe the game, right? And that was kind of the feeling I wanted to go for, and I feel like there's a certain amount of that is Critical Role has the reach. And Dimension 20, they have like the reach and stuff like that. But I feel like it's the smaller streams that have the freedom to actually like show people how easy it is to get into like tabletop stuff, as sort of like a gateway kind of thing, because we kind of have the freedom to just throw caution to the wind and say, fuck entertainment, we're just going to do things that we think are fun.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also try out new games, because that's kind of what Plus One EXP does with all of their streams. Like almost, I mean, granted, a lot of, from what I understand as a creator, a lot of at least a good number of those are in some form or another transactional. But they're still trying out new games. They're showing them off to a established audience. And it's not only good for it's a good way for people to experiment and try out new games without actually trying it themselves, I guess is a way you could say
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Especially for a lot of the sort of weirder games, like all those different variations of Morkborg that they've run, or like Nine Cats to Valhalla, and all of that. Watching that stream, I bought that game partly from watching about Nine Cats of Valhalla. So it works, but also Viking death metal cats. Why not?
I mean, that's
Why not?
yeah, absolutely. No, it's yeah, and on top of that, you also get the sort of, I mean, I don't want to say instructional because it's not necessarily instructional, but at least like one of the reasons why I found D&D such an easy place to like an easy thing to start, like running, is that I had so many hours of Critical Role that I had watched that I was like, I think I understand how this game goes. And then all it took was a bit of a supplemental reading of the player's handbook, and I was like, okay, I think I get it now, right? That's all it really took. But there are so many other games out there that just don't have that, and that's where like I feel like the actual play space like can really help with that as well, not just as like, hey, this game exists, but also as like and here's how it's played. It gives you an example of a way to like play the game if you in fact decide to get it and run it for your table, or whatever. It gives you an example, and for me that's hugely helpful in learning a game, because sometimes I have a difficult time just picking up a book and picking up a system depending on the complexity of it.
Yeah, I mean that's why I, at least when I first started my YouTube channel, the reason why I started it wasn't necessarily to, to do critiques or reviews of other people's games and stuff. I mean, I ended up doing that, but that wasn't my original intent. My original intent was actually just making like instructional videos about my own games.
Mm.
Um, so just because I knew that actual play wasn't really a thing that I would really be able to do, as for at least from the GM aspect. I respect your skills. It's not something my skill set really would be well suited for. um, I I'm not that great at improving the actual GM elements, at least in front of an audience that's not quite as forgiving as like a home group or a table or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but it has still at least allowed me to put that kind of stuff out there, without having to also rope in like 3 or 4 or 5 other people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Oh man. Well, we are kind of at the end of our time here, and there's the thunder reminding us, get the fuck off the line, close the screen. So, Hessan, thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. Would
Thank you.
you go ahead and tell people where they can focus? We've mentioned it several times at this point. If you would go ahead and
Mhm.
tell people where they can find your channel and your reviews.
Yes. Okay. So, I have my YouTube channel and website, which I haven't updated in forever. I'm horrible, but anyway. Anyway, it's all of the stuff's at hessanscounty.com, or you can find me on the various socially media stuff at Hessan Young D or Hessan underscore Young D. It just depends. Um, and yeah, and also on itch, where if you want to check out my games, which would be nice. I need to
And
throw I need to throw more community copies out there.
we've got the links in the chat right here. We will put the links in the Ramblemancy channel on the Discord as well, for those of you who can find it, who would like to find it. Um, so yeah,
Also, on in the description, if you're watching this on YouTube as well, which you
yeah,
should,
yeah.
it'll be in the
Which
description there as well.
exactly.
Thank you.
If you are in fact watching on YouTube, why don't you go ahead and press that like button and subscribe? Cause it's really helpful. It just helps us get you know seen. It just really helps out the channel a lot. So
It fights the algorithm, and it is really a pain to hear it all the time. We understand, but it really does help.
it does. Listen, I'm very much somebody who is resistant to subscribing to channels that I'm watching a lot even. So I understand. But don't be like me. Subscribe.
And don't forget to rate your itch purchases.
Yes,
That too, very
please,
very
please.
important.
One of the
Yeah.
best ways that you can help support creators that you follow on itch is to rate your downloads.
Mm.
Absolutely.
And also, in case you were not aware, you can also rate games you haven't downloaded.
Look at that.
Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. Not
Nudge,
that any of us have those
nudge.
that you could go find.
What? No, of course not. Preposterous. Anyway, you can find, if you want to find us, we are. It's a little harder these days, but because we are gradually moving away from posting particularly all that much on Twitter. You can, although we probably still will for promotional purposes for Tomorrow is Dead, but you can find us on Discord actually, which will be here in the chat. It's also in the description if you're on YouTube. It's down there. Um, it might be broken because for some reason and YouTube doesn't like the Discord link or actually any of our links, so they will occasionally just break them for no reason. But
I
um,
fixed it.
Freeman fixed them, but there might be some
I
that like
fixed it. Fine. I'll go in and do it again.
you don't have to do that. Absolutely don't do that. It's so much work. It's so much tedious work. Don't do it. Just if you do find broken links, please do let us know. But yeah, you can find us on Discord primarily. That's like the best place that you can join our Rule of Lore community on Discord. We talk about stuff. We talk about this stuff probably, TTRPGs, And you can also, we actually even have an LFG channel, which has been getting a fair amount of traffic recently. There's people posting their games and looking for players. So if you are looking for games to join, but don't want to go for the, the Russian roulette that can sometimes be just randomly matching on Roll20, give our Discord a shot. That's that's what we got. You can, the best way to support us these days is on Patreon as well. We do have a Patreon. You can find us at Rule of Lore on Patreon, where you can get all kinds of sundry rewards for your support, and we appreciate it very much because that's kind of where most of the channel's funding comes from these days. So thank you to those of you who are patrons and who have been patrons for a long time. We appreciate you so very, very, very much. All right, that's enough of that. We're gonna go. Hessan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been fun. This is a great conversation. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We will see you next week, probably. I don't think there's a reason there. I think we have a Ramblemancy next week.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll just ramble over into next week. It's okay.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, you get it.
Ramble over. Yep.
All right. We'll see you next week, but if not, we'll see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Good night and good zone.
Good.